tap. Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation and the home of Cardiff City World for one more week. We start Saturday night. Cardiff City World launches the official fan channel for the Bluebirds. YouTube.com/Ace. It's not Ace Podcast Nation. Come on, bro. It's Cardiff City World at Cardiff City World on YouTube, Facebook, etc., where we will have a post-game show about an hour after the game finishes on Saturday, hosted by Mr. Robert Boyle, hopefully with a couple of fans on there as well. We'll have daily news next week. We'll have part one of the Michael Chopper live event. We will have analysis. We will have match reactions. We'll have vlogs, hopefully, and a whole array of stuff. Basically, it will be Cardiff City content 7 days a week from the fans, by the fans, for the fans. If you want to be involved, you're a Cardiff City fan, get in touch. And there's plenty to do. It's a little passion project of mine. It's alongside Ace Podcast Nation. But I wanted Cardiff to have their own channel away. It's just so, because I do so much stuff, it's different podcasts and content, that I wanted to be sure that the Cardiff stuff wasn't getting lost in amongst all that, give it its own home, but also so I can get other people involved. And I'm delighted to say that there's plenty already getting on board, but there's room for more. We want as many fans and as many people getting involved as possible. If you've got a phone, that's all you need. You can get involved. Want as many vlogs, clips from games. I'm looking for someone to interview fans or to speak to fans before and after games. If that's something you reckon that you'd be up for doing, get in touch, because that is one which I can't do because I go with my boy. And amongst, I'm trying to not be just me 7 days a week. So there's some other people going. But you know what we're all here for. We're here to talk Cardiff City. We're here to talk transfer deadline day. Although Reese, I think it was, he said to me earlier, it doesn't actually finish at 12 o'clock tonight, like I thought it did, which is interesting. But I've heard all sorts of rumours today. Same person who told me something the other week, which got people's all a bit hot under the collar, told me some stuff. All I can say is that even at this stage where Ebo Adams has joined Derby County, I'm going to be speaking to a journalist from Derby tomorrow about Ebo Adams, which I'm excited for. And also Cardiff have brought some players in, which we'll discuss. But I think Cardiff are not done. Jonathan, I'll come to those little things you said there because I find them very interesting. But if you've heard any rumours, get them in. Let's get them in. Let's have a chat. It's all about transfer deadline day this evening. We'll talk a little bit about the Saturday, of course, as well. But I'll be putting out a preview, hopefully tomorrow night. Rodri Giggs on football, just while I remember, is on Friday this week because it's my son's birthday tomorrow. If I can get the preview edited and filmed and everything in the morning done, because I couldn't do it today because obviously transfer deadline day, I would have done predicted lineups and tactics, and then we could have 3 or 4 different players. So I left it. I'm going to record it in the morning. Hopefully that'll be out tomorrow night if I have time to edit it before my son comes home for the birthday celebrations to begin. So one rumor I heard today from the same person who told me stuff about the players arguing and not getting on with a manager is Sidney van Hooijdonk is basically I don't know what the word is. I suppose like a backup to Kiefer Moore. The thing with the Kiefer Moore deal seems to be Cardiff want him on loan. He wants to go on loan, but Bournemouth want to sell. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. Bournemouth are playing hardball. They've obviously let David Brooks go, which has made it less urgent, I think, for them to get rid of him or get rid of Kiefer Moore. I think that deal's not dead, but I'm less confident than I was. I've been so confident. Sidney van Hooijdonk is an interesting one. I think he'll go. I think Jonathan's just said there. Norwich looks most likely, but I think we've had at least conversations with him. But ultimately, if you're a player and you get offered maybe Cardiff, if other deals don't come off, or a concrete interest from another club, I think we can all understand why you go with the concrete interest rather than being someone's backup. The Illich one is really interesting to me. I was reading what Paula Bandida said earlier, like that we were in for him. From what I gather and what I've been told is we were kind of in conversations with him. We balked at their asking price because you've got to remember he was for sale for $1 million only a few months ago, and they're asking $4 million now, which is obviously, when you've got a few clubs up, and you can basically, share it about, I guess, and you can push the price up. Illich would have been nice, but I don't think even if you take out, even if we'd match the price to me and the wages and stuff like that, I think it would be unlikely that Cardiff City can compete with a top French league team, top half French league team who could offer European football, etc. Like, it's not realistic. However, on the plus side, it is very good to see that we're setting our sights high, and we're trying to go for quality over quantity. And that was something which I talked about a few weeks back, is I don't want to just see a load of players coming in who don't improve the first team squad. So, interesting to me. The one I wanted to start with, which I'm actually most excited about if it can come off, Jonathan Davis has said there, $2 million for David Turnbull from Celtic. Earlier on in the season, he was playing fairly regularly for Celtic and scored a couple of goals. I do like him. Technically very good, aggressive, creates chances, scores goals. My one worry with him is he hasn't played a great deal of football more recently. So it might take him a few games to get up to speed. But you'd like to think, like, that's the same with Nat Phillips, who, by the way, if Nat Phillips is fit and can start games, he's an excellent signing. And I actually think that, and some people will be very worried by that, but I actually think there's a pretty high chance that we'll move to 3 at the back and go with a 3-5-2. I'll talk about that a bit later in more detail, but why and stuff like that. But David Turnbull, I think, would be a great signing. However, I think $2 million is mega steep for someone who's only got 6 months left on their contract. I think it's mega steep. Interestingly, if anyone knows in the chat, because obviously when you're out of contract in the summer, you could speak to clubs, can't you, from other countries to do like pre contracts and stuff like that. Is that the same for the Scottish and the British League or English League or whatever you want to call it? Like, can we do that, or is it classed as Britain, so you can't? I don't know where that works. Rina Moto. So on the thumbnail, I put Rina Moto. I think I put Robinson. I think they were the kind of two which I thought. No, actually, I think I put Sawyers on there in the end. I was putting Rina Moto. Rina Moto looks the most likely to be out, to going out. I think there's several sides interested in him. Apparently, he's on big wages. So I think anyone who's on big wages who's not playing, or anyone who's on big wages and not performing, I think in both instances, I wouldn't be devastated if they're off the wage bill, to be honest with you. He hasn't really played a great deal. He looked like a player not so long ago, but the manager obviously doesn't fancy him, doesn't fit in at the moment, not playing. So, hopefully for his sake, he can go and restart his career, because it's stalled a little bit over the last 6 months. Ebo Adams, as I mentioned earlier, has gone to Derby on loan for the end of the season. I think that's a cracking signing for Derby. So I got asked about him earlier by the journalist from Derby, who I'm going to be speaking to tomorrow, what I thought of him. Everything which I've heard about Ebo Adams is that his attitude is spot on. Very good professional. He's aggressive. He's a good midfielder in many ways, but I just don't think he's championship standard, if I'm being honest. I think he's one of them players who's an excellent League One midfielder or defender. I think he's a real good defender for that level. And then I think to step up to the championship, I think he wasn't as good. Some people might disagree. Some people I know think he hasn't been given much of a chance. To me, I just didn't think he was quite up to it. But a handy player to have around the squad. And this is, like, I don't know, where do you guys think now? So where we are at the moment, like Ebo Adams is out. You obviously had the guys who've early on in the window who went before today was us. I thought our squad was looking a lot weaker. Obviously, you've brought in Phillips, also the guy from Bristol, or who used to play for Bristol, Famara Diodado, I think is pronounced, but I'm probably wrong. What do you think? Do you think at the moment, if they're the only two we brought in, would you be happy with that? Would you think our squad is stronger than it was at the beginning of January? In my opinion, it wouldn't be. In my opinion, overall, the squad would be weaker. However, you could argue that the striker and Nat Phillips are probably an improvement on Panzo and Ugbo. Yes, you could argue that, but I think when you take out Ebo Adams, even though he didn't play a lot, he was in the first team squad a lot. He was on the bench a lot. Same with, Panzo was on the bench every week. It'd be interesting because I can't imagine Nat Phillips has come to sit on the bench. But who do you drop? Like, I know, for instance, McGuinness has probably gone off the boil a little bit. But I mean, I stand by what I said earlier in the season. He's got all the attributes that a Premier League club or a top championship club could want him, because he's like the perfect modern day defender. He's young, his profile, everything about him is like what clubs are looking for. He's young, he's big, he's strong, he's relatively quick for a big man. He's good on the ball, he can pass, but also defensively he's good, his positioning is good, etc. I think one of the problems with him, and a few others, including probably Gutas as well, the biggest problem they've got is that back four they play every minute of every game. We rarely rotate them. We rarely, sub them off, give them a break. So they're constantly playing. And I think mentally, as much as physically, that has taken its toll. So, what do you guys think? Do you think Nat Phillips comes in and rotates with the Gutas and McGuinness partnership? Do you think he plays them as a free because he doesn't want to drop McGuinness or Gutas, but he also wants to get Phillips in there? I do think we've got some players actually which suit that 3-5-2. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Jonathan says, Illich unfortunately gone to Lille. We can't be competing with 4 million offers, but the Diodaro looks a safe option on loan. Yeah, I think that's probably the best term, the safe option. I don't think it's like you sat there going, oh my God, what a signing. He's going to bag 15 goals before the end of the season. But also, I'm not disappointed with it either. Jonathan also says City Van Hooijdonk up to Norwich. Reese says, from what I understand, Kiefer Moore has no intention of joining a championship side on a permanent deal. He'll only drop down if it's a loan. He'd prefer to stay in the Premier League. Yeah, everything which I've heard regarding Kiefer Moore has been very consistent. He wanted to come back to Cardiff. And I've heard that from multiple different people. Obviously, we had Darren Whitcup on a few times throughout January. And he said he had heard Kiefer Moore wanted to come and play in front of the fans, wanted to play for Cardiff, but it was a loan thing because he obviously sees himself in the Premier League long term. Suits everyone, but Bournemouth seem to want to sell him, so it's difficult. Reese says we've got a great track record of signing Scottish lads, so hopefully if this Turnbull deal comes off, he'll join the list of Scottish greats. Yeah, I have that. Sidney Van Hooijdonk is the son of Pierre, yes. So look, Jonathan says apparently we're still in for more, but there are backup options. Could be in for another centre midfield as well as Turnbull and possibly a right winger. So I'm reluctant to say what I've heard because if you particularly the people who watch on Twitter, like when I said what I heard a couple of weeks ago about the team arguing and all not being well in the squad and some players getting annoyed with the manager and etc. And I was very clear, like, I'm not in the know. It's just what I've heard. Everyone just went like all over. It's just so over the top. And I'm not about that clickbait and drama and all that. Everyone who knows me, everyone who's watched my channel knows that's not me. Like, I'm too old for that shit. I just like talking about football and that's it. But obviously I do know people at the club. I do know ex-City players and I do know a shitload of journalists. So I hear stuff, but I'm not in the know, and I don't pretend to be, and I don't want to be. Let's have a look. Reese says, James Forrest from Celtic, I like. Fantastic winger with pace, a trick, been saying we should look at him for a while. Doubt we will, though. Jonathan says he's definitely his son, hence the links to Celtic. But he went, they went for a Deo. You can sign a 3-year contract agreement with anyone who plays in a different country's league. Celtic did it with us, of course, they did with Matthews and Ledley. Let's have a look. Yeah, so that's interesting. EJM says, I love Rinamoto. Yeah, like not long ago, I thought he was like going to be spectacular for Cardiff long term. I really thought he was going to be great. I think all players have to take responsibility for their own performance, their own attitudes, their own everything and stuff like that. But if the manager doesn't fancy you, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to force your way in. If you're not in the side, in the first 11, because your attitude's not up to it, or you're not training properly, or whatever, which I've never heard about Rinamoto, that's a different story because you can get around that. You show a good attitude, you work hard. The manager, normally, if you're good enough, will play you. But if he just doesn't fancy you in his system, or he doesn't fancy you as a player, it's very difficult for those players then to change that manager's view. And especially, like, for instance, with our manager, he seems quite like he's very sort of dour in some ways. He reminds me a bit of Malky in many ways, but obviously very different people. But just in certain traits, he reminds me of him. Maybe a bit stubborn in certain things. And I just think Rinamoto is never going to be here. Yeah, Jonathan says we've been linked to Ryan Kent again, but apparently there's nothing in it. But he is having his contract frozen for refusing to leave Fenerbahce. Didn't know you could do that, or we should do it with Vontae Campbell. Yeah, so basically you can freeze the contract if a player doesn't fulfill their obligations. So I guess it's like their professional obligations. So I guess. And this is for guess guy. I haven't looked at it. I don't know. Maybe if he hasn't trained, trying to force a move or something like that, maybe they could freeze his contract then. You can freeze contracts of long-term injuries as well, which is why quite often if a player has like a long-term injury, you see bits added onto their contract and stuff like that. Lorna says, I thought Kiefer Moore was a dumb deal. Yeah, I mean, everything seemed that way. And it seemed like we were just waiting for the Bournemouth to get a replacement. But the last I heard on that was that it's kind of all in place, but we want him on loan. Bournemouth want to sell, and Bournemouth are being mad stubborn with it. Like they are, like either buy him or piss off, basically. Reese says Kroll, Benjamin, and another academy player all gone out on loan. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that Xavier Benjamin went on loan because I was actually quite impressed with him when he's played this season. And he can cover fullback and centre back. So I thought they might hold on to him. But look, they got to play. We've been saying all season, these youth players, either they're in the squad and they're on the match day squads, or ship them out on loan because they need to play football at that age to become the best versions of themselves. Jonathan says Bournemouth being very stubborn with Kiefer Moore. They won't let him go. He wants to move before the playoffs, but they hold all the cards. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I'm really very surprised. I thought they'd want to get rid of him, but maybe they can't get in who they want. So a couple of interesting comments here. Football with Brownie says, to be honest, I think we've wasted the whole month of January and the games within the month. Is it really worth strengthening now? Well, we only had 2 games in January, didn't we? Was it 2 or 3? Like we ended up with a very minimal schedule in January because they're doing this kind of staggered mini winter break, not winter break sort of thing. The only defense, and I'm reluctant to defend the club because I do feel that we could have been much more proactive in December and coming into January, and we could have hit the ground running, and we could have, for at least the Plymouth game, had a few players in. So I do feel reluctant to defend the club. What I would say is, yeah, you got the financial fair play aspect, blah, blah, blah. But if you look around the Championship and the Premier League specifically, there has been there's almost, it almost feels like I'd love to know, like I'd love to check the records and stuff, but it feels like a record low in terms of money spent. And I think a big part of that is that the Championship and Premier League clubs particularly, but all clubs in the pyramid, are fearful of getting points deducted and things like this. Like, especially if you look at Cardiff, if we got some points deducted, we're banging the relegation, especially with the form we're in. So I think clubs have been really, really super wary. Same in the Premier League. I think clubs are being super, super wary. And what's that? That is resulting in just not much business going on. And then now clubs are panicking and they're trying to do everything last minute. And, that's very hit and miss. Although the one thing I would say is Cardiff have consistently been linked with kind of the same group of players. So that probably indicates that they've got a list that they don't seem to have flip-flopped too much from those different players. So maybe that's an indication that it's just clubs are generally being difficult to deal with. I don't know. Maybe clubs also think that Cardiff, because they are coming back off the embargo being lifted, maybe clubs think we got more money than what we have, and they're asking for a lot more money than we can spend. Another interesting thing, like the Ryan Kent one, interests me a bit. As a player, I think he's really, really good, and I think he's kind of what we miss. But I've also heard some whispers that he's got a bit of an attitude problem. So another one which interested me, which I've heard similar things about, was Ryan Giles. I thought he was wicked when he was down here, but I've heard from a couple of different people, no one who would particularly know, more so fans and stuff, but that he was like had a terrible attitude. But I don't know, very arrogant apparently. I don't know him, so I couldn't, wouldn't say for sure, but that was what people were saying. I think the striker Famaro Diodoro, it's difficult to get like super excited about him simply because his goal scoring record is not that great. Like, it's not like he's banging in a goal every other game. I'll tell you what, let's have a look at his FB ref, and let's have a look at his stats and actually have a deep dive. Let's do a little mini scout report on the new striker live on the air. If you've got any questions and stuff like that, ask them away and I'll get to them all. FB ref, brother. And also, if there's any content in particular that you'd like to see on Cardiff City World channel, then I'm very open to ideas. If people want to say, like, I'd like to do this series, 10 minutes, I really like a couple of series, like 10 minutes, humorous, sarcastic-y, I hate everything stuff. I'm open to anything, like, as long as it's consistent and it's same day and like each week and stuff like that, then I'm all about it. Open to ideas, as it were. But if you want to get on the post-game show on Saturday night, then get in touch and we'll get you on. Let's have a look. Right. Famaro Diarra, age 31, Senegalese. His record this year, his XG is 0.5, which is expected goals. It doesn't set the world on fire. Let's go back and have a look at his shooting stats first and foremost. I would like to have a look at his record going back a bit of time. Right. So his record, his last season at Bristol, which was 2020-21. He scored 8 goals, took 35 shots. Yeah, I mean, like, so let's have a look. So Bristol City did 4 seasons at Bristol City in the Championship, and he scored 13, 12, and 8. So, I mean, it's not amazing. It's not like I said, a goal every other game and blah, blah, but it's not bad either. Like, it's not terrible. Better than probably what we've got at the moment, What about when he went to he went to the Turkish Super League? The team he went to, he finished 5th and 15th, scored 11 goals and then none. Then he went to Granada in the Spanish second league on loan by the looks of it, didn't score. And then this season, doesn't look like he scored a goal. So there's worrying. Early on in his career, he hit 21 goals when he was 22. So in his peak, sort of 24 to 30, the most he scored in a season is 13 goals. So as I say again, not super exciting, but how can I say this without people jumping all over me? I don't think if the club get their way, he won't be the last striker which joins us, which will give us a bit of depth at least. I'd like to see a striker with some out-and-out pace. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting point. Jonathan says Diodoro and Moore have a very similar championship records, to be fair. I think, and maybe it's a bit of Welsh bias. Maybe it's a bit of that. I don't know. But I think with Kiefer Moore, like, I think he's shown Welsh level, Bournemouth at certain times, with Cardiff. Like, he's shown that he can go to a very, very high level. So I think I don't know. It's very difficult. I think I think we should send Tete out on loan. I would really have liked to send him out today, but it doesn't look like that. I haven't heard anything sort of about. Reese says there's a rumor going around we're going to considering sending Bowler back. Anyone know any truth in that? Hasn't really lived up to any expectation. So if you remember, I've said so pre-injury, I thought Bowler looked super exciting. He was very direct. I thought his attitude, his work rate was spot on. When he came back from his injury, I was very disappointed with his attitude. I thought there was a lot of arm throwing, arguing with teammates, moaning, not working as hard, bit of walking, constantly cutting inside, never going on the outside. Whereas at the start of the season, he would go on the outside, but then he'd cut in and he'd get that space because they didn't know which way he was going to go. But when he came back, he was just constantly cutting inside. I think if you send him back and don't get anyone else in, the squad is weaker. The squad as a whole is weaker. But I would argue that Tanner can do everything which Bowler can do at the moment. Like everything which Bowler's done since he come back from his injury, Tanner could have done that. So I don't think you're losing a massive amount. What you are losing is options off the bench. So I think it is vital. You need to get. I think we need a winger, a central midfielder, and another striker if possible. It's obviously very, very difficult. And obviously there was rumours of Runnison going back, and we've been linked with Danny Ward. We've been linked with that was it Forest keeper, and I think someone else as well, another keeper. Interestingly, Reece says there was a salary table released last week, and we were the 6th highest paying players. If that's true, then yet again we've been overpaying and poorly managed in that regard. Yeah, I think we've got to bear in mind is a lot of those contracts are probably a couple of years old. So I think really we've been trying to address those financial issues and overpaying players probably in the last 18 months. So some of them are probably pre that, but it is poor. And like, if you go around all the leagues in the world, generally speaking, I would be very surprised if the average isn't that the highest paid players teams would be at the top of the league. And I think when you're getting the performance that we're getting for the wages we're paying, it's not the best, is it? It's not the best. Let's have a look. Reese says, big issue we've got is creating chances. We get another striker and hopefully we see a Tete leave. We've got to get, I really, like, to me, if we only get 2 players in now, between now and the deadline, I would want to get Turnbull in. And this is controversial, I would think about getting a really direct, pacey winger who can play like wide or in the middle over an out-and-out striker, just for the options, because you've brought in Diodoro, and I think having a really direct winger who creates chances for someone alongside Turnbull would be vital. Like the Turnbull one, Jonathan, you do this all the time, Jonathan. Just either we're great minds thinking alike, or you're just stealing all my thoughts. But he says if we complete the sign of David Turnbull, he's a set play specialist, forward-thinking player, meaning more creativity, no more Wintle corners. Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than wasted corners and set pieces. Long time since we've had a proper free kick specialist. I know Perry NG can hit them, but he's not. He's not consistent with the shooting aspect of it. Love this cherry freeze, man. Lovely jubbly. Hopefully that guy from a few years ago who complained about me having a drink while I was doing live shows isn't watching. Mental. Yeah, most people saying Atete should go. Jonathan says the Forest keeper isn't happening. I don't think Arsenal want Runnison back. We'd have to pay to cancel it early. So I don't see us being willing to do that. Yeah, and to be honest with you, mate, if he's not going to play, I don't think goalkeeper is like massively pressing. Would I like Danny Ward? Absolutely, I'd like Danny Ward, especially if he was like cheap fee wise, but it's not vital. We can address that in the summer. Alnwick's had a good season overall. I do think we need like a left-sided mid defender. So let's talk about that. We've got 3 good central defenders now at the club. I don't know how fit Phillips is because he hasn't played a lot in recent months. So let's assume he's fit to play and start on Saturday. I can see this manager. I think he's shown he doesn't mind that 3-5-2. And I like 3-5-2 as a system. I think it can be really good. It could be solid defensively, but it also can be very difficult to defend against if you get it right. So if you had those 3 as your centre backs, you go with NG. I would put like if Adauda's ever gets back, then Adauda on the left with NG in a 3-5-2 on the other side, and then I would go with hopefully Turnbull and Siopis with Colwell or Ramsey as the 10. So 5-3, and then 2 strikers. Or you go with 1 striker, say Diodoro, and you have Colwell and a Tanner or a whoever behind, someone who's got a bit of pace and direct, and you rely on you rely on the wing backs to be your width, and then you're looking for Colwell to create, and you're looking for the say Tanner or whoever to be a bit more direct in the central areas and run at people. But for that to work, Colwell's got to keep taking up similar positions to what he does, but he's also got to get a bit closer to the striker. But the striker's got to run in behind to create the space for Colwell and other. Is Diodoro going to do that? I'm not sure. From what I've seen of him, he doesn't look like he's someone who's going to run in behind. Personally, not in a 3-5-2, but if we're going to stick with the current system that we have, that 4-2-3-1, Carlin Grant's got to be a number 9. Carlin Grant number 9 with Colwell in the 10 until Ramsey's back. Be interesting what he does with Colwell when Ramsey's back, because all right, Ramsey's not going to play every game, but if Ramsey is that number 10, which he has to be because he cannot play deep, do you send Bowler back and do you play Colwell wide? I don't like that. I think Colwell is best in the central areas. If he had a striker running in behind, I think he'd be doing much better numbers wise, and he'd create much more. It's interesting because I just seen there Reece says 3-5-2, we're getting turned over big time. We seem to have nothing going forward and we struggle with the middle of the pitch. But that's why I think if you look at when we played it in the EFL Cup, it worked really well. And then whenever we've transferred that over to the first team, they seem to struggle with it. But I agree with you. The reason we struggle with it is Siopis is trying to do like 3 roles. He's trying to play a traditional 6 and protect the wide areas when the wing backs are forward and play breaks down. Siopis' job is to cover that space to make the gaps disappear in those wide areas. But he's also then trying to play an 8 and dictate play and play through the lines and progress the ball up the pitch. He cannot do everything. And I think he's really suffered from trying to be the player dictating the play, but also be the player who sweeps up everything, covers for the players going forward, etc. And I think it's massively affected him. A Turnbull would be perfect. A Jordan James was the dream, as I've said many times. I think the 3-5-2 works if we get Turnbull. I think if we don't get a Turnbull or similar, then I would say keep with the same system. And that is purely speculation. The manager might stick with his system anyway. I just hope. Do you know what I wouldn't be against, right? And I might get slated for this and just be called stupid. And I'd play 4-4-2, me. traditional, old school. 4-4-2, right, out of possession is one of the most solid solid formations to take up. So these days, teams, when they're doing their tactics and their formations and everything, they literally have two formations, one for in possession, one for out of possession. And quite some of the bigger teams do it, in your own half and out in the opponent half as well. So they have four. But let's say you got two, one in possession, one out possession. I think if you're lining up at 4-4-2 to make it not complicated, you have two banks of four. You have your number 10 just behind the striker, so it's like a 4-1-1-1 out of possession, and then in possession you can progress it into a 4-4-2. Get the wide players right up. You have two midfielders. One completely holds and is responsible for all of the defensive covering across the pitch. He covers both wingers, covers any areas if the play breaks down. He just makes a foul. He puts it out for a throw, whatever. And then you have an 8 next to him who dictates play and progresses the ball to the wingers who are really high and wide. And you have a big guy up front and a pacey guy. Or you have a big guy up front and you have a Ramsey or a Colwell off him. One thing I think we've missed a trick with Colwell as well is he's a big boy. Like, you could play Grant up front in our normal system, play Grant up front, running in behind, but you could also use Colwell's height and size to try and win some flick-ons for Grant. So sorry, that's what I was saying about Diodoro, is what I've seen of him, which admittedly is not loads, but what I've seen, I did have do a bit of research this afternoon. Like, he seems more of a traditional target man rather than a guy who's going to run in behind. So it's difficult for me to say with any authority that he's going to be one or the other because I haven't seen a great deal of him. What's his height? How big is he? Yeah, one thing he has got is he's a strong boy, and he's also he's got a real good. In some of the clips I saw, he's got a really good first touch under pressure, which is something which we massively need. 6'4", take that. He's a big boy, a big strong boy. But one thing which impressed me in some of the clips I saw is his first touch, but not necessarily like his first touch when he's got the ball at his feet and stuff like that. It's like when the defender's tight to him and he's under pressure back to goal. Like, I really think that we have lacked that. And that's one of the reasons why I thought Kiefer Moore would have been perfect for us, because he's so good with his back to goal under pressure. If he's as good as what I think in terms of his link-up play, I think that even more so says, right, play 4-4-2 and play Grant off him. Lorna says Colwell needs to do the basics instead of trying to do fancy footwork. I disagree with that. His job is to create, and at the end of the day, the reason why he's not able to create is because we're not getting the ball to him when he takes up good positions. And then when he does finally get the ball, there's no movement in front of him. The wingers are too deep or too narrow, and there's no striker making any movement in behind for him to create anything. So he's got to try and create something out of nothing with some fancy footwork or step overs. But I appreciate your opinion. And look, I might be wrong. It is what it is. But I think we could use Colwell's size a bit more, especially if we played a Grant up front. There's someone made a comment about Robinson. Just trying to find it because that was something I wanted to talk about. Bear with me a second. If it was you, say, so I can look out for your name. I can't find it. Someone said something about Robinson potentially leaving. Say it again so I can read it. And yeah, Ugbo was really easy to defend. Reese, I agree with you. He was just stood there. He looked like at the start of the season he might just have a knack for being in the right place at the right time. So, which is obviously a massive trait, but I don't know. It's a difficult one. So Lorna, yeah, I agree. Like, he tries to fancy footwork and then it can break down and stuff like that. But if he's got movement in front of him and the wingers are wide instead of narrow, he doesn't need to create something from nothing then. and I think his vision and his passing ability will shine through. The problem is he's taking up good positions. The ball doesn't come to him. He goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and then he's end up stood next to Siopis trying to get on the ball. I don't know. I just think out of all of our players, he works hard and he tries to create something for me. No one else looks like creating anything. And I think he's suffered from the players around him not providing the ability to get the ball to him, and two, then just trying to move it. You've got to have options at the end of the day. But I take what you're saying. I don't disagree, but I just disagree with the reasons why, maybe. But it's annoying because he had his best game and he gets dropped the next, or he rotated the next game. Robinson has 3 average games and kept his place. But at least with Robinson, he had 5 or 6 games in a row and was able to, like, you're able to build some momentum. Like, for me, I just wish they'd just play Colwell, just play him at number 10 in his strongest position until Ramsey's back and get the ball to him and have movement in front of him to so he can try and create something. And then if he makes those bad choices, or he dwells on the ball, or he tries to do flicks and this and that, if you've got movement off the ball, those flicks and those little feints, they're massive to break down. You know, when teams play like a low block of 4 or 5 and it's very congested, and you need those flicks and those creative movements, but you can't get it if you've got nothing to pass to or nothing to do with it. Jonathan, it was me who was talking about Robinson. I could see him going if we get a right winger and Turnbull. Yeah, mate. To me, I think, well, I certainly heard that he's one of the highest paid players in the squad. I've also heard that him and the manager do not like each other. There was obviously stories earlier in the season about him being like there was a problem between the two of them. It just hasn't been consistent this year for me. But I also think that's not just down to him. It is, of course, like his attitude and his work rate. I thought his attitude in the Sheffield Wednesday FA Cup game was stinking, absolutely disgraceful. And if I was the manager, he'd have been off easy, like early doors. However, I also think he's not a number 10. His favourite position is either on the left, but I actually think you either play him left wing or you play him as number 9, or he's on the bench. Don't play him in number 10 because he doesn't create. Your number 10 has got to be the player who creates chances for other people, and he just doesn't create anything. So to me, like, play him off the left, play him at number 9, fine. I think Carlin Grant offers more going forward and going back, though, this season so far. So for me, like Darren said on the show a couple of weeks back, that Robinson, it looked like he was going to go. And I believe that is still an option, particularly if that would explain also why we're looking at wingers as well as strikers, because he's on his way out, and I'm sure there'd be takers for him as well, so they might be able to recoup a bit of money, which is also, they need to try and do that in some ways as well. Be interesting who goes, because I think, like I said, you've got, who would you get money for? Rinamoto, Sawyers, maybe not a great deal. Robinson's probably the one who will get you a bit of cash. I think not many others, but apart from ones you don't want to sell, like NG or McGuinness and stuff like that. I wonder. I saw someone mentioned. Surprised no one came in for Colwell. I wonder what is, because the club will have a price for him in mind. Like if we get X amount, we'll sell him. Personally, it's weird, right? Because I don't think he's torn up trees in terms of, he hasn't been like, he's not undroppable, and his numbers are not amazing or anything like that. But he has turned me around a bit this year with his performances, but more so his attitude. Like, just going back to that Sheffield Wednesday Cup game, he was like the only one in the forward sort of 4 who even remotely was trying. Like, he was pressing on his own a lot of the time. And I think for me, he's kind of turned me around a little bit, because I think he's shown, particularly when he had his cameos early in the season, like he's shown that he can do it It's just how do you get the consistency out of him? In my opinion, you get the consistency out of him by two things. One, by actually playing him week in, week out and giving him a run of games. He's a young player. He needs to be playing. Two, he's got to have options and the right people around him, i.e. someone to get him the ball. And then when he gets it, people moving off him to, for him to create something. Be interesting. I think Jamalu Collins is a bit of a conundrum to me. I got to say, I'm not I think he's a good championship fullback, but also I believe that he's really tired from his just from recovering from his injury and stuff. I think it's really kind of caught up with him a little bit, and that comes back to the lack of options at the back. Like we weren't able to give him a rest. Like there was a point where he'd had, I think, like about 8 or 9 pretty solid games in a row, but he looked knackered. And you're thinking, right, rotate him out for Panzo, give him a break, and then he can come back the next week sharp and rejuvenated and get that form, keep that form going. And he kind of played through that tired spell, and he's not quite looked the same since. He just looks exhausted. And I feel for him because that injury was a long, painful one. Jonathan says, unfortunately, Colwell still has a lot of injury troubles. Anytime he gets a good performance or a good run, he gets a niggle, which seems frustrating. Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of injuries, haven't there? But I think also he's been rotated a couple of times when he's coming off the back of a good game. Reese says, do you think we're coming to the end of Rawls' career at Cardiff? Been a fantastic servant for the club, but the time has caught up with him. When Ramsey's fit, Turnbull plays alongside Cyprus. Yeah, I wouldn't sell him, but I think he's got to accept that he's probably more of a bench player now when you need to control games or see games out. However, I say that. We said at the start of the season that we were worried by him and Wintle as a duo because we didn't have the legs in there. One thing I will say about Rawls is we've looked worse without him in the side alongside Siopis. When it's been Wintle and Siopis, we don't look great because Wintle's not able to progress through the lines and progress the play to the wingers or the number 10 or the strikers. Whereas when Rawls is there, at least we've got someone who can penetrate like the low blocks of championship teams. Because most championship teams defend with kind of a low block and they make it very difficult to break them down, particularly if they're away from home. There's a few which play high lines and stuff, but it's, not loads. Let's have a look. Jonathan Davis says, pull up a championship tackling stats. Oh, let's just turn that down. Pull up a championship tackle stats. People are nailing Collins, but he's high up on that list. And NG and Gutas are up there for interceptions. 100%, mate. I think if anyone who's criticizing Jamalu Collins, other than to say, he's lost a bit of form and he's tired, etc., are mad. Because when you think of the injury he had, to come back in the form that he's produced this season, but the consistency, I think, is massive. Let's have a look. Championship tackling stats. I think he's had a really good, solid season. Look, he's not. I don't think he's the strongest. I don't think he's like, player of the year or anything like that. I just think he's had a solid season. He's faded a bit in the last month, and I think that's a problem. Scoring stats. Do you know I'd really like to have seen us have a look at? It's too late now because they'll never sell him. But Jay Stansfield, I really like from Birmingham. I think he's a quality finisher. And he just does not stop pressing and running. He's like a little shitbag who just won't stop. And I think we lack a goal scorer who's just ratting about the place, putting defenders under pressure, quite often creating something from nothing. Red cards, saves, offensive data, scoring, key passes. That'd be interesting to have a look at in a minute. Right, interceptions. Oh, come on, man. Wait for that to load up. To play devil's advocate, he's having to make more tackles because he's having to counteract his poor positioning. Yeah, I don't think that is too bad. Stansfield's on loan from Fulham. Is he really? I didn't know that. I thought Birmingham signed him in the summer. Okay. He's a player I would love to see at Cardiff City. I think he'd become a cult hero straight away. But I don't disagree with you, Rob, there with your point about his positioning. He does get caught out a little bit. And I think actually Carlin Grant has massively helped him out this year and probably got him out of a bit of stuck sometimes. It's not loading, man. It's really frustrating. I'll have a look at Opta. Reese says, can flip that though. The loads of tackles on that side show teams are focusing on attacking us on that side. We actually conceded quite a few goals from that side. Looks nervous to get stuck in. He does, but then there's been games where he's been gone flying into tackles. Do you know what? I actually think we get caught out more, not necessarily with teams targeting Collins and going at him one-on-one sort of thing. I think we get caught out quite a lot with a ball coming from NG's side and Collins falls asleep at the back, at the back post, and teams seem to just get in. And like in the Norwich, I think it was the Norwich game, they scored 2 with quite quick succession and nipped in and scored. And actually, the keeper got the blame for that. I think he got dropped, Alnwick, after that. But I actually thought it was on Collins at the back post falling asleep a bit. Expected goals. I don't want any of that. I want tackles. Come on, bro. Right, I'll have a look. Louise Wood says Nat Phillips, good signing. Went down under 20. Went down with the under 21s yesterday. Saw the files coming through. Think we're getting a few signings. Yeah, look, I'd be very surprised if we're done. Very surprised. Like I say, we've talked about a few different options, and I think Turnbull's the one which I think can really make a difference to a team this year. Jonathan says we're getting attacked from everywhere. Gutas and NG are in the top 10 for interceptions. Both play the same side. McGuinness is next to Collins. Yeah, I think because Siopis, going back to what I was saying, he's trying to do 2 roles all the time. And I think when you do that, when you're not focused on just your role, you end up like sacrificing some of the quality in your role to try and do the other role, if that makes sense. If we can get a Turnbull or similar alongside Siopis, who is genuinely technically good, aggressive, can progress the play, can play through the lines, can get the ball to the wingers, get the ball to the number 10, get the ball for the striker running onto it, or link up off the striker. If we can get a midfielder to do that alongside Siopis can do what he does brilliantly, which is be that defensive midfielder who covers for the players going forward in the spaces when play breaks down. Got a superb first time crossfield ball. He does that really well, where the ball comes into him from the fullback or the centre back and he just whips it over the top for the wingers. He's got a really good vision, but he shouldn't be the one who's trying to dictate play and play through the lines. That's got to be on his midfield partner. Rawls probably hasn't got the legs or that to do it now, but Wintle, look, Wintle, Robinson, Bowler, at certain points in the last probably 2 or 3 months, no, maybe say 2 months, there's been games where their attitudes has been absolutely disgusting. And I stand by that, and I got video footage to show you to back it up as well. And look, all right, sometimes the camera can play tricks and it looks like someone's having a moan or got a bad attitude, but really, they have been working hard. But I stand by that absolutely. The 3 of them and 1 or 2 others have had stinking attitudes. And I think particularly like Robinson is one of the highest earners at the club. And you can't work, you can't press, you can't put the effort in. Surprised at Wintle because his game is based on work rate and passion. So was surprised to see that. But I would say, just to clarify with Wintle, it's been less, his attitude has been less consistently bad to the others I mentioned. Wintle just looked a bit. He looks like a player who wants to leave at some points, I think. Let's have a look. Jonathan says Syop has been found out a bit. His form dip also coincides with the teams figuring out they can outmuscle him, as well as international injury. He can't. My thing with Psyop is he just can't do it all. He can't be everywhere. He can't be the destroyer and the passer. He just can't do it all. And I think if we can get someone with him to do their job, he can just focus on being that destroyer, and which he's very, very good at. He reads the game well. He anticipates danger well, but he can't anticipate danger well if he's thinking about trying to move the ball forward to attack. If that makes sense. My other browser screen is being super slow. I'm trying to get all the tackling stats as requested, but I'm having trouble getting them in. Oh, that's quite an interesting one, though. I'll see if I can get that up. So this is zones of control. Where on the pitch are the teams touching the ball more than their opponents in the open zones? Cardiff City's open zones of control are their own area and about 20 yards in front of their own area. And then the two furthest corners, so basically by the corner flags. Our danger areas where we're out of control are the center of the pitch, all the way through. Tells a story in itself. What we were just saying about central midfielder, that tells that story exactly, which is very interesting that I just happened to come across that. Reese says, last weekend off, probably been a blessing. Players given a proper time off, no international duty. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that when they come back on Saturday, they're going to be fired up. They're going to be raring to go. They're going to be fit and fresh. Players like Collins, who've been struggling with tiredness, hopefully they've had a good rest and they're ready to go, because we got to look, performances are great. We have to bloody get the results. And I'm a big proponent of, if you perform well and you work hard, the results will come, which they will undoubtedly come. When you get the performances right and you start putting in good performances, even if initially the results don't go your way, eventually it will come good and things will work out. However, at the moment, we need a couple of results to get us going. So by hook or by crook, we need to find a way to beat Watford on Saturday. It's difficult. Up until recently, our away form has been a massive thing, a massive compliment of the manager. I think our away form and the way we set up has been excellent. So if we can get that solidity back in the away game, and then hopefully have the players to create something in that last half an hour of the tight games. Our next three games are Watford, Preston, and West Brom. Preston's the only home game. Three very, very difficult games. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, if we get 4 points, I'll probably be quite happy, because very difficult games. Preston have hit a bit of a rough spell recently. They've lost 3 of the last 5, whereas they were flying at the start of the season. So we've got to win that home. We've got to win that home game against Preston. Got to set up right, get these new players, hit the ground running, and go with it. West Brom are obviously flying up in 5th. They have lost 2 of the last 3, so maybe there's something there which you can get at. Watford have been a bit inconsistent as well. So, look, they're big names, the teams. Watford, West Brom, big names, but everyone's beatable in this league if you set up right, everyone knows their roles, and you have the right personnel. So I've said this just to finish off tonight. I am fully on the Balut train. I think he's the right man to take Cardiff City forward as a club, as a team, the rest of it. I think we should stick by him, we should back him, and we should let it go. Let him build something over the next 2 or 3 years. However, he's not, just because I support him and I want him to stay and I want him to be the manager for the next couple of years and I want to stick with him through the good and the bad, doesn't mean he's devoid of criticism. And I think his team selections have caused problems for the team this year. I can give a couple of examples as well. The rotation of the keepers caused a massive issue with the back 5. Before that, our back 5, or a back 6, if you include Psyopis, looked impenetrable in some games. We looked really solid against some really good teams. As soon as he changed the keeper, the back 4 looked suddenly much more nervy, much more likely to make a mistake and we started giving the ball away. McGuinness's passing suddenly didn't look so slick. We were very slow on the ball, going side to side, going backwards. Whereas earlier in the season, you go back to the Huddersfield, the Swansea games, our passing from the back was sharp, and we were passing out from the back, but it was with purpose. We lost that purpose when he rotated the keepers. That's his fault. He's dropped Colwell after his best couple of games just to rotate for the sake of it. That's a problem. The biggest one for me, though, is when he keeps putting 3 holding midfielders in Wintle roles, or he plays Wintle roles and Siopis, and that just killed us. We've done it twice. We did it for a run of like 5 games, I think it was, and I think we lost all 5. Like, we're just awful. Never looked like scoring in any of those games. The second he changed it back to 4-2-3-1, we looked creating something. And then obviously that dwindled a bit because we haven't got the players, or we haven't got a striker to get in behind and get those chances. But there's no point in having a striker who runs in behind if you're not getting it to the right players to create something. That was a massive issue. And unfortunately, recently, he started to revert back to that. Like, Ryan Wintle is not a number 10. He's never been a number 10. He's never going to be a number 10. He is not a number 10. I like Wintle. I think he could be a good squad player for us. I think if you have him and Rawls on the bench, I think that's good options to tie games, see games out. If you need a bit of fire or you need someone who's composed on the ball, good options. But he shouldn't be starting for the championship, or for us in the championship in 2024. We need Turnbull, I think, is the takeaway. Right, last couple of comments. Reese says, say it every week. Our wider issue is the wide men don't stay wide. They drift too narrow. Fullbacks are often the players furthest forward. Crowds the middle of the pitch. Yeah, I've been saying all along, and I said that. And as I said earlier, mate, I know like you disagree with me slightly on Cornwell, you and your mum, but I think Ruben Cornwell has suffered from the lack of a midfielder being able to get him the ball. The wingers coming in narrow, so he's got no options in front of him. Everything's congested. If he does get the ball in the good pocket of space, everyone's 2 yards away from him. No movement in behind, no movement, behind the fullbacks to slip a little ball in. What is he supposed to do? But he's our most creative player, but you're not getting him in the right player. Louise Silverwood says, please like and share the stream. This is a great chat. Appreciate that. Please like, share. Most importantly, please subscribe. And if you're a Cardiff City fan, subscribe to Cardiff City World, youtube.com/@Cardiff City World, because it's just from Saturday. That will be Cardiff City content 7 days a week. And if you want to support the channel, I don't like to push this too much because I feel like I'm kind of, boring people. Patreon.com/Ace Podcast Nation. You could be a member for like a price of a coffee per month, but that literally keeps the channel going. It allows me to do regular podcasts. It allows me to go live several times a week. It allows me to do the podcast with Rodri. It allows me to go and film podcasts. I've got some amazing podcasts coming up, which I've been recorded. Obviously, I do in the live events with City Legends. The Michael Chopra one is coming out for people to watch who haven't watched it so far. It's like a 2-part, like a 3-hour podcast split into 2 parts, which you guys will get to watch. First part next week. We have the Willie Boland event, 10th of May. If you want tickets, the email to get them is all over my social media. It's at the Rose and Crown in Pontypridd. It's going to be an absolute cracking night. Very personal one for me, as people know. Willie got myself and my wife together, and it's 2 days after our 16th wedding anniversary. So it's super exciting. I hope to see you all there. And got some new sponsors coming on board soon as well. So please look out for them. As always, please support that side of things. If you can become a member at patreon.com/Ace Podcast Nation, it's so big, it's massive. It's like £3 a month, price of a coffee. You get exclusive shows. You have shows which don't go out on the main channel. Most importantly, you get 24 hours early access to the tickets for the live events. And we got some big ones coming. Excuse me. As well as several other things. You also get behind the scenes stuff like that. It's £3, bargains. But that literally keeps the channel going. Check out the Sports Social Podcast Network. That's where you can find all our content, including Cardiff City World. Please do, though, if you haven't already, go over and subscribe to youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation and / Cardiff City World, because from Saturday, 7 days a week, Cardiff City all day, every day. Let's go. It's a passion project of mine, but if it goes the way I want it to, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be incredible. So much stuff coming your way, guys. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate good to see new people in your chatting and stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and all that. Instagram. Facebook, I tend to do a lot of my posting. But I'll see you soon. See you tomorrow night. Friday night, Roger Giggs and Football on this channel. Tomorrow night on this channel, hopefully, we'll have the Cardiff Watford preview up. If not, it'll be Friday morning. Saturday night, 1 hour after the game finishes, join us for the post-match show on Cardiff City World. It's going to be phenomenal. And we've got all sorts of stuff dropping next week. Appreciate you guys. Take care. God bless. Big up.